Welcome to You Are Intuitive, a refreshing series of candid, intimate, and grounded conversations about developing and using intuition in the real world. I am your host, Dana Mahacek, and my guest today is Lara-Rose Duong. Lara-Rose mentors activated women on their unique prosperity paths. She is a traditional financial advisor turned modern money witch who marries spiritual and financial rituals to help her clients create prosperous lives and unleash their own inner rich witches. Lara-Rose's soul work revolves around engaging in the full spectrum conversation around money honey and prosperity in all areas of life. She is committed to helping the women across from her to heal their money honey stories and to have them singing the mantra, "Love is money." Lara-Rose empowers her clients to discover that they have the strength, wisdom, and knowledge inside of them to be the queens of their own cash flow. She holds sacred space for women to define prosperity and luxury on their own terms, and her work is now featured in The Numinous, among other publications online. I'm so honored to be sharing this conversation with you today, and I hope that you enjoy it. Thank you for watching, listening, and tuning in. Hi, Lara-Rose. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
I'm really honored. I'm really excited to be able to connect with you and to have this conversation about intuition. And I know that everyone who's watching or listening, that they're just like chomping at the bit to hear all of the insights and your own perspective that you have to share.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be a part of this. I was thinking last night, like, little me that was like 3 years old or 5 years old or 7-year-old is like freaking out right now.
freaking out because this conversation is happening like
yeah.
That's the way I feel about it too.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah.
Had I, and not even just like 3-year-old me and 5-year-old me, but like 30-year-old me is like super excited, because when I was first coming to understand myself as intuitive, nobody was talking about it in this way, and it wasn't really kind of grounded and down to earth. So yeah, I'm super stoked to get the chance to talk to you about it.
Me too. Thank you so much for like putting this all together.
Yeah. So I guess an obvious place to start is just asking whether you consider yourself to be intuitive.
Yeah, I definitely do.
And has that always been the case, or?
I think when I was little, I didn't have the words for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And then as I became like, a little bit like a young lady, like in my teens, I considered myself intuitive, for sure. And then like early young teens. And then as I went through my life, I went through phases where I thought, no, I'm not. And then other times where I'm like, oh no, obviously I am. And then back to like, no, I'm not. Yeah.
And during the times when you were like, no, I'm not, what was like the obstacle or the reason or the story behind why that wasn't accessible to you, or why you couldn't be intuitive?
I think I wasn't listening, period. Like to anything. Like whether my body was saying, hey, you need to slow down, or like events in my life were saying, hey, you're not supposed to be here right now. I wasn't listening to any of that. I was very much like, I am the creator and I will make things happen mode. And I was all like, I'm going to hustle my way to the top, whatever that means. I don't even know. Yeah. And so when I wasn't listening to those cues, then I wasn't hearing anything at all. Yeah. But there was an incident where I remember I wasn't listening and I had like my head in the sand, just focused on like conventional life. And I have this thing where I say, like if you don't hear things at first, eventually they'll start screaming at you.
Yes. Yeah.
And then they'll scare the shit out of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Been
so
there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had an incident like that where I wasn't listening for a while. And then my great grandmother, who I've never met, came and spoke with me. And by spoke, I mean like stood at my feet and screamed at me.
Oh, I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah. And I'd never met her. I was terrified. I was in Ontario at the time. So about 3 hours ahead. It was like, I think 5 o'clock in the morning. No, 5 o'clock in the morning my time when this happened. And I ended up calling my dad because I was so scared in BC.
Where it was like 2 a.m.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know what's happening, Dad. Like, I think I'm going crazy. Like something is wrong. Yeah. And I told him like what happened and what she said. And he didn't question it. The first thing he said was, well, what does she look like? What was she wearing? And I'm like, what kind of question is this? You know? And so I described like what I saw, and he said, okay, you need to come home right now. And for me, it was like a confirmation. Oh yeah, I am like fully cray. And now my dad's like bringing me home, like to check
to commit you.
To commit me. And so I'm like, okay. So I packed my stuff, and I was still really freaked out about it because things that had led up to this moment. And when I got home, like I unpacked, we had dinner, and I was still really nervous about like, well, what does this all mean? What's going to happen? And then all of a sudden he took a picture from a photo album and pulled it out. I'd never seen this before, and was like, is this who you saw? And I was like, yeah. Cause I even like down to describing the outfit that she was wearing.
Really?
Yeah. Cause she was, when she was alive, she was a Buddhist nun in Vietnam. And they have a very specific, I call it uniform or costume or whatever, like robe that they wear. And hers was like very like tight to her body, and was like buttons all the way up, collared. And that's what she was wearing when she was freaking out at me. Yeah. And my dad believed me because like she raised him, and that's how like she was very strict and would like scream at him too.
I love that it's like the Buddhist nun who's like, hey, like,
yeah, like, what are you listening? And I'm like, I don't know, because you're scary. Yeah.
So when you saw that photo, like you telling me this story, and before we hit record, I was telling you how sweltering hot it is here right now, but I am like covered in goosebumps. It was like an ice treatment. It was so, the resonance of that, just like, how did you react when you saw that photo? Like,
I was shocked, just shocked. And my dad just said to me, it's like, yeah, well, it looks like your great grandmother follows you around. Because it's happened, like she's shown up here and there, like through different ways, like either through sound or through dreams or through like yelling at me or whatever, like depending, like if I'm not listening, then it escalates to that point. And then other people have said it too, even people I don't know. I remember being at the Tree of Life talking to this amazing man, and all of a sudden he's like, did you know that there's this woman that follows you around? And like he described her too, and I was like, yeah, okay, that's my great grandmother.
That's really amazing. Like, I know for me personally, like I feel the presence of some of my ancestors, but I don't like see them in that way, or like have other people describe what they're wearing and stuff like that. But that feels really, really special.
It does feel special, and like unnerving at times too.
Yeah, not gonna lie, it's kind of weird sometimes too.
Yeah.
But then with that, so like when you first had that experience when she was yelling at you, did you take action then after that to change something that you had maybe been ignoring or not feeling in alignment with? Like, was that a wake-up call to actually make some changes in your life, or did you still not?
Call. No, that was a wake-up call. Like once that, it was so intense that like I was actually staying at my friend's house overnight when this happened. And when it happened, I like in the middle of the night, like just packed up my bag and like left. went back to my apartment and called my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like just packed everything up and like changed I remember the next day I was walking down the street, I changed my phone number back to BC, packed my stuff, got on the bus and left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's pretty sudden, right? But yeah, that sometimes I find personally that like we need that terrifying kick in the ass to actually like get a move on or like make the changes. And I want to actually talk about that in relation to, because I know you used to be like a traditional financial advisor, and now you're not a traditional financial advisor. Was that a scary shift for you to make, or was that an intuitively guided choice that you had? Like, what was that like, shifting from traditional world to being a money witch?
It was many things. It was exciting and like a coming home, like a fresh, like I could breathe again, but also terrifying at the same time, right? Because like, you know, I had an office downtown with like the traditional signage and all that kind of stuff. And then to walk away from all of that and then just start on my own. It was definitely scary, like wondering things like, well, how are people going to view this? And are people going to take me seriously? All that kind of stuff. And am I going to be able to make a living and take care of myself and my family? All that kind of stuff, right? I thought about all those things. It was truly more painful to stay where I was than to move into this place where I am now. Because like in that situation over there, like there were so many people that I was seeing that I was like, wow, I could help you in a different way. And like, we're not getting very far with this form of work. I'm not saying there isn't a place for that, because there definitely is, but there's this whole conversation that needs to happen before this. And I was doing that conversation anyways, to like in a sneaky kind of way.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I was already doing like sacred space and like had my office set up a certain way so that when people came in, like all the work was already being done behind the scenes. That it just didn't make any sense anymore to like just to do it behind closed doors. Yeah.
And like you were saying, it is painful to not be like the full expression of who you are, to like to keep it under wraps. It's effective for a time, but then at a certain point I felt with myself too that like there was literal pressure inside my body, and I was getting like really bad rosacea and just like all of these physical symptoms that because there was so much energy that wasn't being expressed, and that was painful and like scary to think about, like you were saying, what will people think of me? And like they might think I'm weird, or they might think I'm crazy, but at a certain point it's like I just got to say it anyway, because not saying it is really messing me up physically. And how did people react?
I would say my traditional clients that I have are not with me anymore. But there's this whole new world of clients that I work with now that I'm so grateful and blessed to work with them that I wouldn't have if I didn't make the change. And I just feel so much more alive and so much more free. And I feel like the results that come out of this work it's how do I say this? Like it's creating wealth in all areas of the person's life, not just financially speaking. And they're more prepared to make the financial choices they need to and action steps once like, we've done all like the other work. Yeah.
And so how do you use your intuition in your business? Like what does that look like in kind of tangible, practical terms?
how do I use it? Wow, that's crazy. I haven't thought about it in this way, just because it's like, I feel like it's all over the place. It's like so ubiquitous, but I think the intuition comes into play where like trusting that we're going where we need to go, right? Like if there's insight coming through saying, hey, we need to focus on this area of your life right now. I think in a traditional financial advising setting, they'd be like, that has nothing to do with their money. Like, why are you talking about that time they were with their mom and their mom said X, Y, and Z, you know? But for whatever reason, that's really important, because that moment may have shifted their entire mindset around how to bring in wealth in their lives. Who knows, right? Or maybe suddenly we're focusing on, well, how are you when it comes to relationships? Like, what are you doing in your love life? Because that translates on how you receive and give money too. And then also just hearing divine insight. You know, like, what do the angels have to say for you? What do your ancestors have to say for you? Or they might guide us to like areas in the body that need healing, or like more movements, or intuition around, well, what goddess does she need to work with right now? Or not a goddess, maybe she needs to work with this over there. Who knows? Yeah.
And how do you receive those insights? Like, say if it's, we need to talk about relationships. How do you know that you need to talk about relationships? Like, do you see it, or do you feel it, or is it just like a knowing that you get?
It comes in different ways. Sometimes I can hear a specific phrase. Like they'll say a phrase, and I don't know what it has to do with anything, and I'll just say like, this is what I'm hearing, and I'll just say the phrase, and they'll say, and then the person will respond. He's like, okay, that makes sense. That's how I am in this area of my life. I'm like, okay, then we need to hone in on that. Or like I'll see a movie, and they'll show me a scene, and I'll say, okay, well, this is what I see that you're doing. Or I'll know, like, if it's a painful scene, then I'll say, I'll just like ask questions that pertain to that area of their life to see if we're on the right track, and then go with it. Or it could just be like I'm visually shown like areas of the body with blockages, and then I ask just questions like, okay, well, is this like a feminine energy? Is this a masculine energy? Like, what are we supposed to know about this? And then I get shown more information, whether it's like through sight, sound, knowingness, or feeling. It comes through all ways. Yeah.
And if somebody's watching or listening to this that's like, oh, well, that's easy for you to say because you're so like tapped in and so connected. But for people who are feeling like they're maybe not intuitive, or they're not intuitive enough, was that something, like, was clairvoyance something you consciously developed? Or like, do you have certain practices or rituals that you use to actually strengthen those muscles?
I would say yes, definitely. I think when I was younger, like when I was like a child, like clairvoyance was there. I didn't know what it was. It was more of like a knowingness. I didn't know how to formulate it. Like, you know, there'd be certain people that walk into our lives, and I would just say to my parents, like, oh, I remember saying to my mom, like, there is something fishy about that person. And
you're like 6.
Yeah. I actually kicked somebody at one point, and they're like, why did you do that? I'm like, there's something fishy about you. I don't like you. And my mom was like, oh no.
She's probably like profusely apologizing. I'm so sorry about Lara-Rose.
But in other circumstances, I would say the same thing. Like, I didn't like someone close to us, she was getting married to a man, and I was a child, and I remember him coming to our house trying to befriend me, and I was like, I don't like you. I don't trust you at all. And my mom was like, you can't say that out loud. And I was like, I don't trust him. But then behind closed doors, she's like, I don't trust him either. And then later, like once he did get married, like about a year into it, we found out that he was already married with children in another country. And we're just like, see, that guy is shady. Anyways, so how do I say this? The reason why the practices are important is that is to learn how to listen all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because like moments like that, it's like I didn't ask. It wasn't like I was 6 years old going, should I or should I trust this guy? Right?
Yeah.
It was just like direct information coming through, like, no, this is not okay.
Something's not right. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of like practices, I mean, on a fundamental level, I find that if I don't take care of my basic human needs, then it's very distracting.
Mm-hmm.
So if I haven't slept enough, if I'm not eating well enough, if I'm really stressed out, like I was when I was doing financial advising,
yeah.
You know, it's a little bit harder to hear because you're like focused on basic needs.
Yeah.
So once that is covered, then it's like playing. I mean, I used to play games with myself.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, and I've talked to some of my clients about this who are trying to get more into it. I'm like, instead of practicing on like big things, for example, like when they're like, am I going to meet the man of my life?
Yeah.
When and where? That's kind of a big topic to tackle.
Yeah.
But so fun things I like to do is, and I still do this to this day, is if I'm headed somewhere, I'll ask them to show me the most direct path to get there,
mm-hmm.
and then show me the parking spot I'm supposed to go to.
Mm-hmm.
That's really simple because then it's fun. You know, like you're not hurting anybody. The stakes are very low because if it doesn't work out, you're not like, oh, I'm a piece of crap. You know, it's just like, oh, it didn't work out this time.
Yeah.
So I'll just like trust the instinct, like, okay, I should go to this path. And then, and like all the time, like whether it's that parking spot or not, like within a few, there's always something there for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like a fun game that you can do with yourself in terms of that. But I find that spending time at my altar, meditating, those are all important things for me to hear and see better.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the ultimate thing, the main thing, is to just trust what comes in.
Yeah.
Right? Like just trust it and then also respond. Because sometimes like they're saying to you, hey, we're sending you this information. And if you don't respond by saying, hey, message received, thank you, they're kind of like, oh, she's not getting it. Okay, so we'll just stop sending messages.
Yeah.
Right?
Or even like not necessarily stop sending messages, but like not, yeah, like, because I believe that all of us, we are receiving data and insights like all the time. And it's not like any of us are getting withheld information or insights, but it is kind of like, it's more fun for you and for guides and for energy when there is that kind of back and forth. Like, it's like playing fetch with a dog, right? Like, yeah. Like they throw the ball, but then if the dog isn't like bringing the ball back, they're like, this isn't really fun.
Well, and then they have to escalate.
Yeah.
To like, especially if it, like the example, my grandmother, you know, my great grandmother, she had to escalate to the point of like terrifying me for me to hear. And it's not like they want to do that. So I guess with the stop sending messages, what I mean is that they'll start finding different ways to do it.
Yeah.
And then
that aren't necessarily as pleasant.
Yeah. Pleasant. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I find too, like initial messages are really subtle, and it takes like just like inner space and inner quiet to sometimes hear them and recognize them. And those are usually more just like gentle and non-threatening insights and guidance. But when you're not listening, it becomes more like a smack on the head.
Yeah.
Pay attention.
Yeah. Because it could be as simple as like, for example, because they'll try to communicate to you, or whoever is communicating to you, in a way that you understand. Yes. So like if you're just like hanging out, like say you're at a coffee shop and you're really focused on the conversation, but suddenly you overhear like 3 words from a conversation over there, or you hear like a phrase from the radio, and it triggers a memory. There's a reason why that's happening.
Yeah.
And you just have to take a moment and go, okay, like, is that relevant to this conversation, or am I just supposed to like be aware of that for something else? Because a lot of people will have the initial rush of like something's going on, but then be like they just brush it off and then carry on with what they're doing. And then whoever is guiding you is like, okay, seriously, how can I make this any more obvious?
Yeah. And I love the idea, like, I love that you brought up that idea of play and having a game, making it a game, strengthening the intuition, because I find, especially like a lot of the people I've worked with, there's a lot of pressure to like get it right and to like start with something with huge stakes. Like, should I
Yes.
leave this job, or should I leave this relationship, or
Yeah.
like, should I move to a different city or country? And that's like, it becomes harder to, like, I believe that they would already be receiving guidance on that, but it's hard to hear it and discern it when like your fear is involved and there's like all this stress and pressure about like, I need to make the right choice or else.
Yes.
But starting with things like, what do I feel like wearing today?
Yes.
Or like, you know, what music would I like to listen to today? It doesn't matter what the answer is, but like tuning into yourself and just like paying attention to your body, it is like a game. And over time, you can like raise the stakes a little bit higher, a little bit higher. And like what you're saying about trust too, it's all about trusting whatever's coming through and not needing to overanalyze it, or not needing to second guess it. But it's easier to trust it when you can trust the little things too.
Exactly. It's just like any relationship.
Yeah.
Any relationship that you're developing, there's going to be that first like trial period where you're like, okay, how good of friends are we?
Yeah.
You know, and you just like start putting out the breadcrumbs, they're putting out the breadcrumbs, and it just gets bigger and bigger over time. And so you're like, oh my gosh, like I'd lay my life down for you. So and that's like the same thing with intuition and like connecting with whoever your divine team is. Because they will definitely always guide you in the best way possible if you listen.
Even if it doesn't
Make
seem
sense
like
in
that.
the moment.
Yeah, totally. Do you come from a really, like, I imagine being a traditional financial advisor before, that there is a lot of just like mental, analytical, that sort of side to you? Do you still struggle with turning the volume down on the thoughts and on the like, that doesn't make sense, or on the logical side of you?
I would think it's actually the flip side for me, because like I come from a family that is very intuitive, right? My mom, like I was raised by my mama honey, and so she's very intuitive. All the business dealings that we've done like throughout my life has always been on gut instinct.
Nice.
And then like it's the gut instinct and then the numbers. So like, for example, for like shopping for property or looking at investments or whatever, it's like, okay, on a gut instinct, does this make sense? If it does, let's go check it out. And then once we check it out, then we check in again. Does this feel right?
Yeah.
And then if it does, then we check the numbers and go, okay, like does the numbers back it up? So my mom has always taught me go like intuition first, then numbers. So I had to train myself in terms of like that other business to go numbers first. And I think that's why it was so uncomfortable for me, because half the time I was just like, well, I know the numbers are saying this, but this is not what we should be doing. But I can't really say that in this situation, except for maybe take this home and really think about it and see how this feels, right?
Yeah. That's really amazing, actually, because I don't think a lot of people get that, like that official modeling of like, it's okay to trust your gut first and then the numbers. And like, I don't think any parent would ever say, don't trust your gut instinct. But I think a lot of parents don't explicitly teach and like model for their children what it means to pay attention to the gut instinct, and then pay have that permission to like trust that gut instinct and then go see if the numbers or the logic backs that up. I think that that's a really amazing position to like that you had that growing up, rather than having to like teach yourself that or unlearn the other way, like many people, including myself, had to do, you know, like deconstruct what we had been taught to like reclaim the intuitive side and like reinvest ourselves in the intuition. Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
My mom was really good at reminding me that even if things made sense on paper, that if it didn't feel right, not to do it. Right. And so I still talk to my clients about that. Like when we're talking about like for my high net worth clients, when we're talking about big investments, like I say it quite often, like, okay, I know this makes sense on paper, right? On paper, like everything makes sense, but how does it feel? Is it in alignment with your purpose? Is it in alignment with your own soul's mission? Does this make sense? And if something inside of you is saying, don't do it, even if you can't, like, even if you don't have the words for why not to do it, then don't do it.
Yeah, if it's not a hell yes, then
then it's a heck no.
And it could also be like a weight. Like what I've been learning through my own intuitive practice is it's not always like a yes right now or like no forever. Sometimes it's like a not yet, just like wait and see, check back in soon. And that can be really frustrating for me because I can be impatient with certain things. But I think there is sort of this idea that like, oh, if you're intuitive, you'll have like immediate and like complete answers to things or insights to things. And that's not always the case, I find.
I agree with you on that one for sure. I even heard my mom say that. She's like, oh, I'm not ready yet. Or I'm just waiting for the right moment. And I say that too. I'm just waiting for the right moment, like just waiting for that signal or that cue, like that it's go time.
And that's also a muscle to strengthen and build up, and something to like actively learn how to trust in your own life.
I think that skill is so important when you're to exercise when you're in relationships or looking to get into relationships, right? Because like we just like, I mean, obviously love is the best thing ever in the world. I think so. It's one of like the greatest gifts that you can experience. You know, it's literally an experience you cannot buy. You can't force someone to love you. You can't force yourself to love a person. And so like when that first like flood of like dopamine and endorphins and oxytocin flood your body, you're just like, yes, I am all in. And sometimes like that's when it's the hardest to listen to your intuition. When your intuition's like, okay, all the chemicals are saying yes, but like divine teaming is saying hell no. Like this person is not okay for you, or at least like not right now. Like that person needs to go through some life experiences and then y'all can connect. That's the hardest time to listen. Or when you're deep in a relationship with someone and your time together is finished, whether it's ending violently or it's stagnating and the growth is no longer there, and you're like, wow, like I feel like I'm being called to go somewhere else, but I love this person. We've been together for so long. You know, then it's really hard to honor your intuition at that point.
And also too, like just because you are a money witch, I find financially as well, like there's that idea of sunk costs and investments that like I've already invested X amount of dollars and X amount of value into something. And even if the intuition is like not a good thing anymore, it can be hard to like rationalize or justify like pulling that out and like wasting or losing something of value, in that case, money.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In that case too, I mean, if your intuition is saying to walk away, I would say walk away, because if you don't, you could be losing so much more.
Mm-hmm.
But if you, I can't remember what the expression is. There's an expression for that. It's like, walk away and just accept the loss.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of.
It's totally gone. It's not there right now. I guess it's not in my language to even say it anymore, but yeah, it's just kind of like, accept the loss for what it is, knowing that you're actually taken care of, because it could have been more.
Yeah. Well, and now with you saying that, I'm getting that awful, is it a Kenny Rogers song? Like, know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away. Yeah. So, yeah.
I can hear it. I can totally hear it. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Lara-Rose.
Yeah. You're so welcome anytime. Yeah.
That is so awesome. So can you tell us a little bit more about your altar practice and about like your rituals that you set up to strengthen and deepen your own intuition?
Yeah. I like to go back to the basics. So like sometimes it could be as basic as like before going to sleep. So this is not at the altar, like this is like laying in bed. So, which is like, this is the altar, so that's okay. I'll just ask simple questions like, what am I supposed to know right now? Or, like, how can I take better care of myself tomorrow? And I usually ask like, how can I serve better?
Yeah.
Cause like I see myself in a place of service right now. So that's my main focus. And then I just let myself go to sleep. And I like this practice because rather than asking the question and then waiting and dwelling on the answer, I like to just go to sleep, because it's a practice of like surrendering to the information coming when it needs to come. Yeah. And so then I trust that the information will either come through my dreams, or I trust in the morning I'll have like a clear knowingness of how I'm supposed to guide more, or like insights will come over the next few days or the next few weeks on that topic. And then when it does come, then trust it. Yeah. So it's basic and simple, and you can do that anywhere. You're not forcing yourself to be like, I've asked a question and now I must hear it right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, that goes back to the pressure. That's like, I'm asking a question. Come on, universe, what's the answer now? Right? Like, please tell me. And I'm just remembering my little sisters growing up who would be like, tell me the answer in 5, 4, 3, 2. And it's like super pressure because they're counting fast, right? And
like what is happening?
Yeah, just having that surrender and having that trust that like the insights or the feeling or the knowingness will be delivered. Yeah. And
like, and on that topic of timing, I think that's where some people, and myself included in this piece of the conversation, where I could say, no, I'm not psychic, or no, I'm not intuitive, because in terms of like mainstream media and people's expectations of what intuition and psychics will look like, there's this idea that, like God steps into the room and you're like, God, at what point are they going to have this much money and this many children? And God's like, in 5 years on this date, they're going to meet this man at this corner looking like this. And I'm not saying that does not happen, because I'm sure it does for some people, but it's not like that for everybody. Yeah. I think we all experience that so differently, and not to hate on yourself if you don't have that like direct speed dial to like the all-knowing source. Who knows? I don't know. And I don't even think they give us information in that way.
Yeah, or at least not all the time. Yeah. And you bring up a really good point with that. Just this idea or this notion of what counts as intuition and who counts as intuitive or psychic. Yeah. That if you're expecting it to come in a certain way and at a certain time and like at a certain level of profoundness, then it can be easy to disqualify yourself and just like discredit whatever insights are coming to you already.
Yeah. And it might take, like what we were talking about before, that foundational work of, are you taking care of yourself? Are you sleeping? Are you taking care of your human needs so that this body, this altar, can receive information? And the more you do that and tend to, and the more you practice, then you may reach that point where it becomes, in quotes, profound.
Yeah.
But sometimes it happens anyways. I was just talking to this woman yesterday. She was taking care of our house and our dog while we were away. And she was saying to me, when she was younger, so this is like 20 years ago, she was using the Dorian Virtue Archangel deck, and like, did the thing, looked at the cards, and got this reading that she did not appreciate. And she was so mad at this reading. She said that she just like stomped her foot and was like, bullshit. Like, was so pissed and just like called bullshit on it.
Yeah.
And she was standing there, and all of a sudden, and she was like, she wasn't even near the deck. There was nothing in the room. She said, all of a sudden there was this huge like whack, and the card just like flew from the table and onto the ground. Really? And she like, she was terrified. And she was like, where? And she just said to me, she just stood there and went, okay, I heard you.
Okay,
not bullshit.
Yeah.
Got you. And then she just went outside and just stood outside and was like, okay, that was terrifying. And she's never used that deck again until she was at my house. And now, but this time, before she opened the deck, she was just like, okay, I promise I will listen to what you have to say. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And so there could be moments like that where like they come in strong, hot and strong.
Yeah. But tending to your physical vessel and your physical body, I love that you brought that up too, because there's this idea that intuition is like very third eye and very crown chakra and like pulling in from the ethers these insights. But if your basic needs aren't being met, and if your like physical body is in shambles and not being tended to, you don't have the same capacity to like ground and anchor and process and utilize the like information out here if you're not tending to in here first.
Absolutely. And also like integrating that information, right? Because if we're pulling from here, we need to pull it all the way down into our body, so that it gets integrated into our actions.
Yeah.
And plus sometimes by learning to move it into our bodies, you can start experiencing intuition through just senses in your body, like certain like throbs or certain tingles in the system in certain areas could mean a certain thing.
Yeah.
Like that can't be discounted either on how you hear and feel.
Yeah. Well, just like earlier when you were telling the story and my whole body was goosebumps, like that is a physical way that my intuition demonstrates resonance, right? And like indicates truth is through the goosebumps. Or sometimes I'll like just randomly start crying or getting really emotional, and that also indicates resonance and truth. For me, it might be different for other people. Like they might get goosebumps if something's weird or misaligned, right? But being able to just witness yourself and see like what's going on, what you're feeling, and then being able to just correlate your own body's communication with like matching it up to like what that means for you.
And start there. Like, and because I know you were talking about like different practices, but I like to focus on the simple and the basics so that everyone can feel like they can do this.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think it was really heartbreaking for me because I've had certain clients that walked into my life and they're like, I want to, I thought I was a channeler, but because I don't experience it in this way, I'm not.
I know.
And I was like, oh my God, like, honey, like let's just like slow it down. Just because like the ceiling didn't open and like Kuan Yin didn't descend down and touch your forehead doesn't mean that you're not going to channel. It just happens differently for different people, and it may get to that point. Or maybe you're going to experience it differently. Like I connect with like my divine team in many different ways, and like I take care of my basics, and then I move to like the stronger, more deeper conversations. And in that realm, it's more like I'm at my altar, candles are lit, offerings are there, and then I go into like a meditative space, and I enter a realm where I invite them into my space. We have a conversation, and they go into a higher self space, and they can teach me, or I connect with them and get information that needs to get passed on. But in order to get to that point, there needs to be the basics. And I only say that because I've heard it so often from people and from my own self, where I'm like, I am crazy, none of this is real. So if you don't like, and that's the one thing I keep saying to my clients, I'm like, this is real, this is real life, this is your life. Like, because, and you get that confidence by doing those basic games first.
Definitely. Yeah. And it is like, once you have those basic steps in place, like playing the games, trying, like just tuning into yourself for really low stakes decisions and choices that you make on an everyday basis, not waiting for like the special or the big or the momentous choices, but like literally practicing all the time.
Yeah.
Your own self will tell you how to deepen it and like how to quote unquote take you to the next level.
Yeah.
Because it is different for everybody too. Like some people, like you obviously have altar work and like you have a specific ritual around that. That might not work for some people, but once they have that foundation in place and once they have that groundwork kind of established, they can ask themselves, what's my next step? Like, what is my next most aligned action? Or like, how can I strengthen my intuitive practice today or right now? And then just paying attention to what's coming through. And like you said earlier, just trusting whatever it is that comes through. Might not be what you expect or what you want to hear.
Yeah.
It might not seem like legitimate or official enough to like become this intuitive superpower, but trusting what's given to you is your next step.
Yeah, absolutely. And it could be, so your practice can evolve and change and move with the seasons and the cycles. Like sometimes I'm at my altar, sometimes I'm in the woods, sometimes I'm at the lake, sometimes I'm in my car. Like, who knows what's going on? And maybe your journey might start by like going into the woods and sitting on the rock and just listening to the stories that the rocks and the trees and the wind have to tell you. And that's where you start. Who knows? Yeah. And the next thing you know, like you're in conversation with Lakshmi or Kuan Yin.
Who's to say?
I don't know. Who knows? But just to trust it and to walk away from that thought that this is crazy.
Yeah. Or the thought that like this is something that's open and accessible to other people, but not to me.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know where this is coming from, so I'm just going to throw this out here for a second.
I love it.
Yeah. is to stay away from ultimatums. Because I was just hearing somebody say, okay, I'm going to ask this question. If you don't show me this sign, I don't believe in you. Or this isn't real. Ultimatums. Like, I don't feel like working in realms of ultimatum is going to be helpful in anybody's development.
thank you so much for bringing that up. I think when I was first starting out, I was working in realms of ultimatums, and it doesn't really work. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
But that's really helpful for everyone who's watching or tuning in to know that it is. You can play with it and not have it be this like, show me this sign by this time or else.
Yeah.
Or else you're not real.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for everything that you've shared, and for just guiding us through this, ways that we can start to tap into our own intuition, ways to develop that foundation, and just sharing your experiences with intuition with us. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much again for holding space for all of us to come together and talk about this. Like I'm just so stoked about the times that we live in.
Me too. I even just think like we are on the internet, not in the same city, talking about intuition.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
In broad daylight.
Yeah, we're gonna like release it to the public. We can do that now. I think that's so amazing. Yeah. And if people wanted to learn more about your work or wanted to follow you online, where's the best place for them to do that?
On Instagram, you can find me at Lara-Rose Duong. I have a website, LaraRoseDuong.com. You can find out my services there. I now offer single sessions, which I wasn't before. I was very focused in like long-term relationships with my clients, which I still do. But a really great interactive place to hang out with me is on Facebook in my group called Rich Witch Circle with LRD. I think we have over 700 like sacred women in there, whether you're like cisgendered or transgendered or gender fluid. That's great. My only requirement, I should say, is that you have an open heart, that you're curious, that you want to experience more prosperity in your life, and that you identify as a sister, because for me it is a sisterhood, a place for like women of all kinds to gather, and for it to be a safe space, in which so far it is a sacred safe space.
Well, thank you so much. And
thank you.
Definitely whoever's watching, go follow her. She's awesome. Well, thank you again, and I hope that you enjoy your day.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
Bye.